Dale Wilcox, who is the executive director and general counsel for the Immigration Reform Law Institute. Dale, welcome to Breitbart News Tonight.
Well, thanks for having me.
Dale, I would love to hear you explain to our audience the proceedings today on Capitol Hill with the Senate. There were all of these dueling bills, dueling interests, as everyone is trying to come to some sort of a deal regarding the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the DACA program that was instituted during the Obama years. President Obama signed this thing, and it's unconstitutional. It's now running out, as we all know, and they're trying to come up with some fix, some amnesty. And there's all these bills, all these different plans and ideas. Can you explain to us what happened today in the Senate and where we stand now with this debate?
Sure. What had happened was McConnell had promised when they agreed to the last continuing resolution to get the government up and running again, that he would open debate on the immigration issue and specifically talk about DACA and the president's priorities. And so today, there were four bills, or actually four amendments put forward. What McConnell did was he brought a shell of a bill, a skeleton of a bill to the floor that had nothing to do with immigration, and he opened the floor to allow the members to file amendments to this shell of a bill. And there were some very interesting amendments offered up, essentially four bills. Two would have been highly destructive to the country and would have basically been an amnesty for more than the DACA population of the illegal aliens that Obama had authorized their presence and work authorization. Those, thankfully, were defeated. So even those bills could not generate the required 60 votes to be considered. There were a couple of other bills introduced, one by Grassley, who Senator Grassley is a immigration, what they call an immigration hawk, which just means he believes in the rule of law and he's pro-enforcement. He put forward a bill that also was defeated, did not receive the 60 votes, but it pretty much followed the president's four pillars that he issued just a month ago.
Yeah, and that was the one that President Trump endorsed, correct? Because it followed his framework? Yes. Yes,
and he had indicated that if that bill would have passed, he would sign it.
Yes.
And then there was a separate amendment by Senator Toomey, which dealt specifically with sanctuary cities and would have been a good bill. It was called Stop Dangerous Sanctuary Cities Act, and it would have denied federal funding to sanctuary cities and would have worked on the detainer issue to provide cover for state and local jurisdictions who comply with ICE detainer requests to hold criminal aliens.
Yes.
In the end, the American people can breathe a sigh of relief tonight. All the amnesty amendments for DACA illegal aliens that were introduced were defeated. They've all gone down. McConnell kept his word. He allowed the debate to happen, but it's done. It's finished. And the American people are safe once again because the Senate will begin a recess starting next week.
So, Dale, let me ask you this. Right? Let me ask you this. The tougher laws proposed also failed, and as Schumer points out, and the media have not hesitated to point out, Trump's proposal received the fewest votes of all. Now, if you describe Trump's proposal as the most conservative of the four, we can argue about that, but let's just say for argument's sake, sure, it looks like none of these four, from right to left, has the requisite support to get through the Senate. And as a student of negotiation, I would argue that there isn't the will on either side to make a deal, that there may be no deal that can be made, and therefore what the country actually wants is for DACA to expire and for this limbo to continue, because we already know that the Trump administration is not going to prioritize the deportation of DACA recipients. And people are more comfortable with that than in any of the reforms or any of the packages of reforms on the table. That the two sides are just not willing to find any agreement, and there may be no possible agreement. We would call it a zone of potential agreement. I've got the shooter. I've got the gun. Between the two sides. What do you say to that?
I think you're absolutely right. And we discussed this last time about negotiating tactics. Trump went in there and said, here is my bottom line. And as we know, you don't do that when you're negotiating. You start high and then work your way toward the middle and try to meet in the middle. Well, what President Trump has said is, this is my bottom line, take it or leave it. The Dems in the Senate said, we'll leave it. And so that's it. And the president has made it clear he's not going to sign anything that does not comport with his 4 pillars.
Yes.
There's still the Goodlatte bill in the House, which is actually a much better bill, although it has its flaws too, because it increases guest workers. But it
it's at least the best of the bunch. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let me ask you
this.
It
doesn't give citizenship to the DACA individuals, just some kind of legal status so that they can stay and work. To bring that to the floor, the Republicans would need to get 216 of their colleagues to vote for that, and that means no more than 22 Republicans could oppose it. I don't know if that can happen. People are so split on this issue.
People are split. That could pass. But given today's result in the Senate, I don't know if it goes anywhere in the Senate. But let me ask you this. The Democrats now have essentially ensured that this is going to be an issue for November and not for March 5th. That March 5th is going to come and go. We're going to have to fight this out at the polls. I would just point out that Democrats enjoyed a double-digit lead over Republicans in the generic ballot polls at the start of the year, just 6 weeks ago. And now, according to one of these polls, Republicans are in the lead. Democrats have openly advocated for more amnesty, and their poll numbers have plummeted. And that's maybe not the entire explanation for why they've fallen. There's also the tax cuts and so forth, but those haven't really kicked in yet. You'd have to think that Trump's on pretty solid footing here, because even though his bill didn't get through, the country likes Democrats' ideas even less. And, I agree with you that saying what your bottom line is up front is not a great idea. But what Trump did was show that the Democrats won't take yes for an answer, to borrow what Mitch McConnell's speech said this morning. And I think he's in a pole position here politically. I think if Democrats try to take this issue to the polls in November, they're going to lose. What do you think of that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And they're actually batting around after the failure today. The open border and cheap labor senators are batting around the idea of this next budget fight that's coming up on March 23, making the DACA passage an issue again.
Yes, and they're probably
on shutting down the government and harming Americans to assist illegal aliens. I really doubt they try it again. It would not work well for them in November.
You don't think that they would try to slip anything into the appropriations bill, the big omnibus that's coming next month?
Oh, they can try it, but the House won't have it, and the president certainly won't have it. And of course, it's up to the good people of this country to stay on their elected officials to make sure it doesn't happen. But the Democrats, at this point, they really have no leverage. I mean, they've created this false dichotomy and urgency to do something about DACA.
But they do have one thing, though, Dale, don't they? They have wall funding. This is something that President Trump absolutely needs. And this is the one bit of negotiating that they do have. Now, apparently, there is 1 year of, the funding for offense that's just, the little thing that for 2018 that's being held up. It hasn't gone to a vote in the Senate. It's in an appropriations bill passed through the House and all that. Hasn't gotten through the Senate. So that's just 1 year, though. But the big enchilada, the big, funding, the 23 billion or was it 25 billion or whatever that figure is, that is the thing that's their big, carrot that they've got, right? And that to me seems like it is a significant one, because President Trump needs that wall, and they know that he needs that wall.
Well, yeah. I mean, we would also like to see chain migration and the visa lottery ended too, and those are two of his objectives, because it's harming the country. We've seen, recently terrorists sneak in under those provisions. So these are important matters, and my base doesn't want any kind of amnesty. However, it indeed makes it a little easier to swallow if we can fix this broken immigration system and deep six, chain migration, and the visa lottery, and get that wall funding.
Absolutely. You know what? One of the things that I think is a takeaway of this is that it appears as if the Democrats feel that they are not willing to make a deal right now, but they could get a better deal sometime down the line. And it seems to me that the Republicans are thinking that they don't need to make a deal now either, and they both sides want to run on this thing. And if the Republicans have a mandate after the 2018 election, they are in a much stronger position to force the hand of the red state Democrats in the Senate, especially. Because, if they were able to hold the House and increase their numbers in the Senate, a really good showing in 2018, they've got a definite mandate to get through that wall funding. And I cannot see red state Democrats being willing to vote no on something like that. That's just my take on it. What are you thinking?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's against their interest to do so. And we saw that in some of the red state Democrats to cover themselves, voted for Grassley's bill. I mean, well, he only got 3, but still, if November proves brutal to the Democrats, you're going to see a lot more cooperation, I think.
So, Dale, I want to thank you for coming on this show this evening, giving us this quick update. Is there anything that you want to leave impart to our listeners that they should be on the lookout for as the negotiations continue and as this issue continues in the news?
Well, I just want to stress again, there is no urgency regarding DACA. You hear people losing their minds. What are we going to do? It's going to end March 5th. This is an arbitrary, date. It was an unconstitutional program in the first place. The people's representatives in Congress have rejected DACA-like legislation, the DREAM Act, so-called DREAM Act, 24 times since 2001. So, there is no, I would calm everybody down. There is no need to deal with this. We're talking about illegal aliens. They're not supposed to be here in the first place. This is amnesty. If we can achieve these great reforms to our immigration system that would help American workers, wonderful. And, if we can come to a consensus, great. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening in the future. I just don't. The two sides are so polarized that I don't see agreement.
Well, we shall see. Dale, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I want to encourage folks to check out the website for the Immigration Reform Law Institute. That is IRLI.org, and we link to it in our preview for this evening. Thanks so much, Dale, and you have a great evening.
Thanks for having me.